Well, good morning. It's Friday again. Here I am with my next cooking session. So it's 11:05. Started a little bit late today, not because of technical crises or anything, but because there was a 2-minute silence in the UK today because it is VE Day, and they're celebrating 75 years since the end of the Second World War, which is it's amazing to think that we've had so many lifetimes or so many years since this a major conflict like that, and it's a little bit ironic that we find ourselves in a world crisis again. But anyway, I'm joining now, or starting now, so lovely to have you here. And today we are going to make some really delicious banana and chocolate muffins. Now, what's so special about these? Well, one it's got banana in it, and the other one it's got some chocolate in it, or cocoa powder, but you can have a little bit of fun with it. So this is one I made yesterday, and you actually separate the mix so that you get different textures inside your muffin, just to spice it up a little bit. But it's still all whole food. You can make it gluten-free if you want to. It has got a small amount of sugar in it, but it's lower sugar. Yeah, just really easy and tasty to do. So I posted the ingredients on the Facebook page if you want to bake along. I'm making half amount today because I made 6 yesterday. And the recipe cup makes 12. So I made 6 yesterday, so I had something to show you like that, and then I'm going to make another 6 today. Also because I didn't have enough mushy bananas to make 24. And there's only 2 of us in the house, so, you know, not too many muffins, otherwise we'll come out of lockdown like this, too much cake. Okay, so what we will start with first of all is actually going to sour the milk. So like we did a couple of weeks ago, if you were following, when we were baking, we're going to make some buttermilk. And if you hadn't seen that one, just to recap, soya milk is the best milk to bake with when you're doing plant-based cakes. Morning, Debbie. Yes, you've got your mushy bananas. Lovely. Nice. Keep going with them. Get them all mushed up. So soy milk, it's got the protein and the fat structure is very similar to dairy milk. So when you're baking, actually makes a really good direct replacement for dairy milk. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it just does the job really well. And with buttermilk, you can, it's just soured milk. It helps the bubbles to react more in the raising agents to create more bubbles, so you get more of the lift. Now, some people say to add cider vinegar to it to sour it, but I like to use lemon because it's fresh, it's natural, and I'm not that keen on vinegar anyway. So here I've got my soy milk. I'm just going to add in a squeeze of lemon juice, possibly up to a tablespoon. It depends really on your soy milk. That's about a tablespoon or half a tablespoon. And then if you can see, it's already starting to curdle. So I'm going to put that to one side and we'll have a look at it again in a minute. So that's the buttermilk sorted. As with all plant-based vegan cakes, it's about creating getting your dry ingredients together and then your wet ingredients together, and being very, very ready before you actually put it all together. So in my bowl here, I've got some whole wheat flour. Now on the recipe I've said spelt flour. These work beautifully. Spelt flour is absolutely delicious with these muffins, but I haven't got any. So I've got some whole wheat flour, and in there I've got some baking powder and some ground cinnamon and a pinch of salt as well. Now, if you are using wholemeal or other gluten-free self-raising flour, then just use 1 teaspoon of baking powder. The recipe calls for 2 because the spelt flour doesn't have any raising agents in it. So if you have got a self-raising, then you don't want to add too much, otherwise you'll get this huge explosion of bubbles in the oven, and then when they come out they'll sink in the middle and be very, very disappointing. So more is not always better when it comes to baking powder. Also depends on your baking powder, how frisky it is. Sometimes if it's quite old, it loses its ability to create enough bubbles. Some just seem to be more reactive than others. So it's a good idea to have a relationship with your baking powder, know what it's going to do. So those ingredients are in the bowl here. I'm just using a whisk just to make sure everything is mixed together, and you don't want clumps of baking powder and things like that. Okay, so now for the wet ingredients. So here I have my, try not to get the light on that too much. So this is my very, very mushy banana. So this is, the recipe asks for 3 medium bananas. So I've got 1.5 bananas in here, all mushed up. And into that I am going to add some coconut sugar. So I get a lot of questions about coconut sugar, especially from people who are following the Overcoming MS program or similar programs where you're having a very low fat diet and coconut is sadly off the menu. But coconut sugar is not made from the coconut meat, it's extracted from the coconut palm, so it is sugar, and so it hasn't got the fat element in it, it just has the sugar element in it. Hold on, give the amounts of the ingredients. Oh, you haven't written it down. Yes, Debbie, I can. So the flour, to make 12, you need 400 grams of flour. So whether or not, in your case, I'm guessing it will be gluten-free flour, or you can use wholemeal or spelt flour. Then you need 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, and a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Okay, so is that all right? Catch it up. And this is to make 12. Oh yes, the other preamble stuff I forgot to mention is the oven is being preheated to 180 degrees. If you have a nice good acting fan oven, then pop it at 170. And then because we're making muffins, I've lined my muffin tray. I'm only making 6, but you'll need 12, so with some wrappers. The other alternative with this is rather than making muffins, you can make it into a loaf. So if you've got a 2-pound loaf tin, line that with some grease-proof baking powder and just make it into a loaf cake. It will just need baking for probably about 5 to 8 minutes longer. Okay, so back to the wet stuff. So in the bowl I've got my bananas, so that's 3 medium bananas. And then there's 70 grams of coconut sugar. And the other thing to mention about coconut sugar is apart from the fact I really must do a blog post about this, is the fact that it still has, actually teaspoon for teaspoon, coconut sugar has the same amount of glucose as white sugar, essentially. So, because people say, oh, it's healthier. But with regards to actual like-for-like sugar, it is the same. However, coconut sugar is refined very differently, so it has a much more natural processing process, if you like, and also it still retains some other minerals and phytonutrients, so it hasn't just had everything else blasted out of it. So there is an element of additional nutrients in there. But the key thing I think about coconut sugar for me is it's so rich, and is the fact that you use a lot less. So normally with something like muffins, you're going to have sort of double, sometimes triple the amount of sugar that I'm actually using in this recipe. But because we've got the bananas, which are sweet as well, and the richness of the coconut sugar, we're actually using a lot less coconut sugar, and therefore cake for cake, you're getting a lot less glucose, immediate release glucose. So there's still some in there, but it's actually a lot less. So that's the coconut sugar. So yeah, the bananas in here are going to be acting as a sweetener, but also as a binding agent as well, because remember we haven't got any egg in our plant-based cake. So that's got 2 roles. So then into the bowl, we've got our soured soya milk. So this is 300 mils of soya milk with a tablespoon of lemon juice to make it sour. So that's all going in. Oh, I forgot to show you, but it's gone very lumpy, like soured curdled milk should be. So that's going in there, and now I'm going to add 75 mils of olive oil. Now again, with a whole food plant-based diet, you tend to use minimal, if not any oil. You could just use, if you don't want to use any oil at all, you could just use more banana, and that will make the cake, the muffin slightly denser, more difficult to rise, and very difficult to get out of the wrappers, but it does work. The olive oil I'm using here is because I'm still in Portugal. The olive oil is always extra virgin olive oil and can be quite strong. So I've got one which has got they grade them according to flavour. So this is a minimal flavour. If you don't have any olive oil, you could use a little bit of rapeseed oil, or like I say, just leave it out. So that's that in there, and let me just double check. Okay, so that's that side of wet ingredients, and because we're making it slightly stripy, for those of you who are just joining, the cake has got a mixed texture like this, so we're actually going to split some of the mix. I'm going to mix some cocoa powder and some soya milk together separately. So in this bowl, I've got 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder, or cacao powder if you've only got the raw stuff. And to that, the recipe is going to ask for 5 tablespoons of soya milk. Now, like I say, I'm just doing half amounts today. So I'm just going to add 2.5 because I've actually only got 1.5 tablespoons of cocoa powder in there. And you just need to mix that together it takes a little bit to get the two together. So if you just mix hard, hopefully you can see that, and then that will just all blend into one. If you are okay with chocolate, so yes, I am, what was I saying? Chocolate OMS. Right, okay, hopefully if there was an interruption there, that's because my power has gone off. But now we're on to 4G, so if you missed a little bit, you haven't missed anything because I'm still mixing my chocolate together. You never know what's going to happen when you're going live. On just a point again, if you're eating a very low-fat diet, often chocolate is not part of that because of the cocoa butter. So you get quite a high saturated fat content. However, cocoa powder, cacao powder is allowed, which is fantastic. And cocoa has lots of phytonutrients in there as well, some lovely anti-inflammatory phytonutrients, which is fantastic. If you want a more intense chocolatey flavour, there are 2 options. One is you can add in some dairy-free chocolate, whether or not that's a really high chocolate cocoa level, so 85%, I usually don't have any dairy fats or anything in it. Or you can find dairy-free chocolate alternatives, so you can put some chocolate chips in it, or you can get a chocolate essence, which is incredibly strong, so be careful with that. But if you are really keen on a chocolatey flavour and for some reason you can't have that, then it is a good option. Okie dokie, right, okay, so moving on. I've got the chocolate ready, I have the banana mix ready, and then I've got my dry mix ready. So it's time to add in very quickly, hopefully you can see that okay. I'm adding in the banana mix only to start off with into the dry mix. So we're going to pop that together and mix that in again, because it's muffins as well. We need to be moving quite fast. So let's just get a little bit more of that in there. So you want it wants to be quite a loose mixture. If it's a bit dry, then you might need to add in a wee bit more soya milk. It just depends on the flour, how the flour reacts. So that's about right. So you want it like a good dropping consistency. Now I'm going to add 1/3 of this mixture into the chocolate. Okay. So it doesn't have to be exact because it's muffins and it's rough and it's really for effect. If you can't be bothered to do this, don't worry. Just mix it all together. I to make things slightly different and have a bit of fun with them. So now I've got my banana mix and now I've got my chocolate mix, and I need to move quite quickly because as soon as the wet ingredients hit the dry ingredients, then the bubbles are starting to be activated, and we want the bubbles to work in the oven rather than in the bowl. So that's why this is all a bit rough and ready, and you just have to act very quickly. So I'm just putting spoonfuls of the mix in the base of the muffin wrappers. And then I'm going to put a spoonful of the chocolate mix on top. And like I say, you don't have to do this, but it's just quite fun. And there we go, nearly got them all out. I put a bit more of that. And you want these to be filled up quite a lot because we want these to be nice, big, puffy muffins. Don't want little sad little droppy cupcakes. And then you're just going to top them with the rest of the banana mix. Just finish that off there. Oh, I used a bit too much banana mix on the first time round, but it doesn't matter because what we're going to do is going to just grab the end of a teaspoon and we're going to mix those together. So you're just giving them a little bit of a swirl. You have to be quite careful with the cupcake wrappers, but just give it a little bit of a swirl. Tap it on the worktop and then get them in the oven. You need to get them in the oven very quickly because, like I say, you want the rising agents to work. Now this is going to be fun because I have no electricity, so mine are probably not, I don't know what's going to happen to mine when the power comes back on. However, there you go, that's life. But the ones I made yesterday, like I say, just show you this one again, this is what they should turn out like. So let me get you one that's in the wrapper. So you can see how well they rise in the wrapper. So there's your wrapper, and so they've got a lovely, lovely dome on the top. Bake in the oven for about 18 to 20 minutes. Then test the middle with a cocktail stick. If it still comes out clean, then it's ready to come out. If not, just leave it for another couple of minutes until it does so. Then take them out the oven, leave them in the tin for a couple of minutes just to settle, then transfer to a cooling rack, and there you go. There you're done. These lovely banana and chocolate muffins, or chocolate and banana muffins, all whole food, plant-based, really, really tasty. They'll keep for a couple of days, quite fresh, and they also freeze really, really well. So if they don't all get eaten all at once, then you can just keep them in the freezer and use them when you need them. So that's it. If you give that a go, do post some photos. I really love seeing all the pictures of the recipes that you've made from all the weeks we've done so far. I've lost count of how many weeks we are now. I think, I don't know, 7 or 8, whatever it is. Yeah, do let me know how you get on. Now next week I might do it slightly different. I'm thinking about doing a curry. A few people have said they're quite interested in me doing a quick curry for a Friday evening. So I will probably do it about 6 o'clock next week, but I will post that up on the page. And hopefully you can join me and have a good curry as well. So have a great weekend. For those of you in the UK having a bank holiday, enjoy the day. And I will see you soon. Thanks, bye.